Well, hello and welcome to Just Ride Bikes. I'm David, and this bike I'm reviewing today is the brand new Ridley Noah Fast. Quite a striking looking bike, isn't it? It's the company's third generation AERO bike, and you might have seen it being ridden very successfully at the Tour de France by Uno X. And I've been riding it for the last few weeks on my local roads to find out if it does indeed live up to the claims of being a fast bike. It says fast on the top tube. Is it fast? Well, I've done a lap of the test track this morning and the results are quite interesting, and I'll reveal those later in today's video. So this is Ridley's third generation Noah Fast. There's actually two Noahs in the range. There's the Fast here, the pro race bike, the one the pros do actually race, and a regular Noah, a non-fast Noah, but still fast, just not as fast as the one with fast in its name. That non-fast Noah is a more sort of realistic option for us regular enthusiasts. You can choose a regular two-piece handlebar or a full integration setup, and that bike starts at €4,000, so pretty good. And a bike, hopefully, I can find out how it rides later in the year with a longer term test. I thought it'd be good to start with the company's halo product, the Tour de France winner, to see what this new generation of aero bike is all about. And the bike I've been testing is an Ultegra Di2 equipped model with DT Swiss deep section wheels, Vittoria Corsa tyres, 28 front and 30 rear, an SLR saddle, and the company's own handlebar and stem.
And the bike weighs, on my scales, with no pedals fitted, 8.2 kilos, which is heavier than other bikes with similar equipment that cost about the same. And to put that price in perspective,
it's £800 more than a Trek Madone SLR, £2,000 more than a Canyon AERO, but it is £500 less than the BMC Team Machine R, which is a good comparison for the aero bike we have here, and one we'll talk about more later in today's video. So the new Noah Fast is max aero, really maxing out the UCI rules around tube dimensions and tube shapes, and you can see that for yourself. This massive deep head tube, the big down tube, the really deep fork blades, and that very striking, visually arresting handlebar and stem setup. And I shared a picture of this on my Instagram, and the comments are 50-50. Some people love it and some people hate it. So really a Marmite bike. And let me know what you think by dropping a comment down below. For me, I don't love it. It's not pretty, but I admire the function over form approach of the bike. And aero bikes aren't designed to be pretty. They are designed to be fast. And sometimes things that are fast don't always look that nice, although in nature that's not always the case. But here, it's definitely a challenging design to most eyes. But after the last few weeks, it's, I wouldn't say grown on me, but it's softened on me. That visual impact is lessened, and I don't mind it. As well as being deep and aero profile, there are also these ribs on the side of the head tube to, I guess, massage air around the area of the head tube. So kind of cool. Also have that raised sort of shelf bottom bracket area and really deep dropped rear stays, and of course an aero seat tube hugging the rear wheel and an aero seat post with a 2-bolt clamp. So very striking front end. This stem handlebar is super narrow, so max aero when you're in the hoods and drops, and there's a range of options available for the stem, different stack heights. But one thing that bugs me about the bike is how the top tube and the stem is not flush, and that's quite a jarring design for me. And unfortunately, because of the way the stem sits on top of the steering tube, you can't move the spacers and put some round spacers on top. It has to be on top of the steering tube. So if I buy this bike, I would slam the stem just for the visual looks alone and go for, if I need a higher front end, slam it and go for one of the higher rise stems to get the fit I actually need. But when it comes to aero, you'll be pleased to know it's more aero than the old bike, and the company claims it's 8.5 watts more aero at 50 kilometers per hour than the old bike. So yeah, a reasonable amount of saving, but at a very high speed. It seems bike manufacturers are testing at ever higher speed to get a reasonable wattage number to put in their press releases. So yeah, 50 kilometers per hour. I mean, the pro peloton are getting faster and faster, so testing at high speed does make sense. because they're riding at those speeds and sprinting at speeds in excess of that. It's just a bit out of touch for us mere mortals. But I don't think this is really a bike that many regular cyclists will be looking to buy, and I'll share why I think that's the case in the ride section in a few moments. Another key talking point with the bike when it launched is the geometry. We've seen in the pro peloton how riders are adopting ever more aggressive positions. So shorter cranks and saddle slam right forward and inline seat posts to really try and open up the hip angle and get into that very low crouch aero position to minimize the frontal surface area, almost like a time trial bike with drop handlebars, and really have addressed that trend with the geometry of the bike and a few key changes. So a very low stack, very long stem and handlebar, and then a steeper seat tube angle than is the norm on other aero bikes like Trek Madone SLR, the Tarmac and the Canyon AERO. So the seat tube angle varies across a range from 74.5 on this size large to 76 on an XXS, so much steeper than a norm. And that's all about encouraging that more forward bias aggressive position. But there are some other changes as well. So it's not just about that steeper seat tube angle. The wheelbase will be lengthened, the chainstay shortened, and the bottom bracket lowered to account for bigger tyres. And what they've essentially done is move the bottom bracket back to allow you to get into a more aggressive position. And while slamming your saddle forward on a bike can get you into a more aero position, it can compromise the handling when you're not going flat out fast. And what I found in riding a bike is that when you're not going 50k an hour, you're cruising along at 25 or 30, the bike does ride very well. The steering is very slow thanks to that really narrow handlebar and long stem, but it's not a super agile, whippy, responsive bike, very slow steering really. But it does ride like a relatively normal bike, just a slower handling bike. It doesn't feel twitchy, it doesn't feel like you're right over the front wheel at all, it doesn't feel precarious in any sort of bad way. So it rides okay. And when you are going fast, so the other day I did my local chain gang where you're often riding at 45 kilometers per hour or more, hopefully, on a sort of rolling circuit. And what I found is when I'm in that tuck position at 45 kilometers per hour, the bike makes total sense. That position feels normal and natural on the bike, way more than a Trek Madone, which is no surprise given that's what a bike is designed for, designed to put you in that position, whether on the drops or on the hoods, and it just feels fantastic. And it feels really comfy as well, and I could ride in that position for hours and hours with no issue at all. Whereas other bikes, it can be quite tricky to maintain that position for any meaningful amount of time. So the geometry and the fit is a subtle shift in trend and reflects that desire in the pro peloton to get very aggressive and aero. And I can see more companies going this route with their aero bikes. Hopefully not for all their bikes, because while it does make sense for an aero bike, I don't think the trade-offs in general responsiveness for climbing, descending is a bit of a downside for me. But for an aero bike, this setup, this approach, I think does work and makes sense. So will be interesting to see if our brands adopt or copy or emulate this style of geometry, and whether for the pros it makes a lot of sense. For us amateurs, I'm not so sure, and that's why I can't wait to find out if the regular Noah Fast has a more sort of usable, regular, everyday riding feel than the Noah Fast. Some other quick details before we go for a ride. Space for 34mm wide tyres, and they spec a 30 on the back and a 28 on the front, so more comfort and more aero. We've seen Canyon do that in the past, and Continental even sold a pair of tyres, Attack and Force, I think they're called, narrow at the front, wide at the rear, makes sense. But the same depth wheels front and rear. A UDH dropout, and you can remove the front mech hanger if you want to go one by as well. The shame of no power meter on the bike. For £8,000, a power meter on a bike designed for racing, a power meter would be nice to see, even just a left side only power meter. But I use my Wahoo PowerLink power meter pedals anyway for testing across all my bikes. And you can customize the build and the color of the Ridley through the company's own website as well. So that's worth looking at if you want to customize the bike change any of the parts, the wheels, tyres, or choose the colour you want. I do love the colour of this test bike, and as you know, I love a fade, and this works really well for me. It looks premium and looks very high quality. Not really a fan of the text on the head tube though. That's a bit of a gripe for me, but yeah, a smart looking bike. But let's go for a ride and see how it performs.
Okay, here we go then. Does the new bike live up to its name? Well, to find out, I've just done a lap of my test track, and the times are, well, yeah, it's the fastest bike around my test track so far. So there we go. It's a fast bike, it does live up to its name. But, oddly, while some bikes feel fast everywhere, this bike doesn't. So for example, the other day I went out with the local chain gang, and when you're riding at 45 kilometers per hour, you're tucked down low on a handlebar. The bike feels amazing, quick, rapid, efficient, and comfy as well. A position I could hold for hours. And you can't imagine yourself on the front of the peloton leading a team into the first mountain climb of the Tour de France. But below that speed, it does not feel quick at all. It feels really slow and dull and heavy and boring, really. When you're riding around at 25 to 30 kilometers per hour, the bike doesn't feel like it's helping you at all. It doesn't feel as nice as a Trek Madone or a Canyon AERO or a Specialized tarmac. It's just really slow, lethargic, and a bit boring, really. The steering is super slow at any speed, and it's heavy. It's about 1 kilo heavier than a tarmac with the same specification. So the weight definitely dulls that sensation of speed at lower speeds. And it's only when you go fast, doesn't really make any sense. Which is no surprise really, given it's a race bike designed for the pros, and that singular focus makes a lot of sense. But unless you're actually racing and you're riding for fun and want a bike that's fast and light everywhere, I don't think that bike makes much sense for us amateur riders, us enthusiasts who want that speed and aero but still want a fun riding bike, because this bike, while clearly fast around my test track, hasn't been the most fun bike I've ridden, well, in a long time. So yeah, a bit of an odd one this. Clearly designed for racing, but going as fast as possible, and makes perfect sense if you are actually doing that. But below that speed, on rolling roads with lots of climbs, it doesn't really make much sense to me compared to a more all-round package that's lighter and just more agile and fun to ride. I am surprised at just how smooth the bike is. Despite those massive tube profiles and deep section wheels, it's a pretty smooth bike. I mean, no comfy armchair, but it deals with the rough roads around here surprisingly well. That 30mm wide tyre in the back definitely helps, wearing nice low pressures as always, and it doesn't beat you up any more than a regular aero lightweight bike. Not as smooth as a tarmac or a Madone, but definitely a smooth enough bike that you could live with it. It could be your only bike if you are riding, you know, our local roads at the weekends. There are a few other niggles to point out though.
While generally I love the colour of the bike and I love a fade, I'm not really a fan of text like this on the top tube. Don't need reminding that 3rd gen Aero tech. Another really small picky one for me is a computer mount. It's, for a high-end bike, it's not the best in the world. It's reasonably secure, but not as secure as it could be. And a 2-bolt setup would be better, and especially putting a light on there as well, or one built into handlebar as we've seen on other bikes would be preferred. But perhaps the biggest gripe is the weight. It does feel heavy when you are riding at slow speeds and you feel that weight on the climbs. And generally the weight with the steering, the slow steering, does make the bike feel docile and just lacking that responsiveness you want at low speeds and when climbing on twisting roads. And I would say a tarmac is a more fun bike to ride, the result of that weight and other changes and differences compared to the bike here. This bike is all about the aero efficiency in a straight line at high speed, but outside of that narrow window, it's not much fun. And a tarmac is a more fun bike to ride. Even a Trek Madone or a Canyon AERO is more fun to ride. And that BMC Team Machine R, which has been beaten by this bike around my test lap, still felt faster. It felt fast all the time. At any speeds, it feels electric. This bike doesn't have that same sensation. There isn't that same feedback, that fizz of excitement when you ride it. But if you love going fast, and that's all you care about, and you are racing, it's definitely a bike to consider alongside a Cervelo S5, the Canyon AERO, that BMC Team Machine R, or a Carnago Y1 RS, if you can get your hands on one. I haven't seen one in the flesh yet in the UK. But I think this bike shows there's still plenty of life left in the pure, dedicated aero bike. And for those people who love speed, they love all the aero gains, this is definitely a bike that delivers maximum speed, maximum aero. But yeah, with a few compromises along the way. So it's a bike to consider if you love riding fast and you are racing. But if you want a bike that's generally fast everywhere and lighter, it's probably a bike to avoid. So there we go, my review of the brand new Ridley Noah Fast. And stay tuned for a review of the more real world, I think, Noah Not Fast, coming soon, hopefully. Anyway, let me know what you think by dropping a comment down below. And if you want to see a review of that BMC Team Machine R, to see how it compares, watch that review right up there. And I put a link to the Ridley website down below in case you want to find out more. This video, as a reminder, not sponsored by Ridley at all, fully independent, fully unbiased. So I've been David, thanks for watching. I'll see you again very soon.